Overgiving too soon is one of the fastest ways to unintentionally smother a connection before it even has a chance to breathe. It often comes from a good place. You want to show that you care, that you're generous, that you're emotionally available. But when you start doing too much too quickly, especially in the early stages of dating, it creates a dynamic where you're investing in someone who hasn't had the opportunity or the need to invest back in you. What many people don't realize is that giving creates a subtle power exchange. When you cook for him, rearrange your schedule, buy thoughtful gifts, offer constant emotional support, or go out of your way to prove your value, all within the first few dates, you're sending a message. That message is, I want to win you. But the moment you start trying to win someone, you've already handed over your power. You've shifted out of being the chooser and into being the chaser. The early stages of any relationship should be about mutual discovery, not proving, not performing, and definitely not overextending. When one person is doing all the emotional or practical heavy lifting, while the other simply receives, it creates imbalance, and in that imbalance, attraction dies. Why? Because people don't value what they haven't earned. It's human nature. When someone has to work for your time, your energy, your affection, even just a little, they feel more invested. They value you more deeply because they had to show up meaningfully to gain access to you. Overgiving also builds false intimacy. When you give a lot early on, you may feel close to that person, like you've bonded or created something special, but it's not necessarily mutual. That closeness is based on what you've contributed. If the other person hasn't opened up in the same way, or made any real emotional effort, what you're experiencing is one-sided connection. You may feel like you're growing closer, but in reality, you're just giving them more reasons to take you for granted. On top of that, overgiving can come across as pressure. For some men, when a woman gives too much too soon, it feels like the stakes have suddenly been raised. Now he feels like he owes something back, even if he's not ready to give it. That unspoken expectation can feel overwhelming, and instead of making him want to commit, it makes him want to pull away, not because you're unlovable, or because he doesn't appreciate kindness, but because you skipped the natural pacing of the relationship. There's also the question of motive. Whether you realize it or not, overgiving is often driven by fear, the fear of not being chosen, of not being enough, of losing someone before they've truly seen your value. So you compensate by giving more, doing more, proving more. But that energy is transparent. It tells the other person, I'm hoping what I give will make you stay. And that kind of giving doesn't feel empowering, it feels desperate. The healthiest, most magnetic energy in the early stages of dating is reciprocity. It's showing interest without overextending. It's being generous without being self-sacrificing. It's leaving space for someone else to rise to the occasion, to show you who they are, what they're willing to give, and how much they value the opportunity to know you. Because true connection isn't built by what you give away, but by what you allow someone to earn. Making him the center of your universe is a common pitfall that many women fall into without even realizing it. It starts innocently enough. He captures your attention, your thoughts, your emotions. You want to spend time with him, talk to him, make him happy. But when your entire world starts revolving around one person, especially early on, it becomes unhealthy. It can quietly erode your independence, your sense of self, and ultimately, your attractiveness. When you make a man the center of your universe, you begin to prioritize his needs, desires, and schedule over your own. You cancel plans with friends, ignore your own goals, and rearrange your life just to fit around his availability. Your happiness starts to hinge on his mood, or whether he responds to your messages. That level of emotional dependence can be suffocating, not only for you, but for him as well. A man wants to feel like he's a valued part of your life, not the entire reason your life exists. When you make him your whole world, you inadvertently send the message that you don't have a life without him. and that's a heavy message. It's an emotional burden that can make him feel pressured or overwhelmed. Instead of feeling attracted, he might begin to feel trapped, as if he's responsible for your happiness 24/7. And trust me, that's a lot to carry. Another thing to understand is that attraction thrives on mystery and space. When you're constantly available, always texting, always agreeing to meet up at his convenience, there's no room for anticipation or excitement. The unpredictability that often fuels romantic interest disappears. When your life feels too accessible, it can make him lose the urge to pursue, because the chase, the natural spark of getting to know someone bit by bit, is gone. Also, making him the center of your universe means you risk losing your own identity. Your passions, hobbies, friendships, and ambitions can fade into the background because you're so focused on nurturing the relationship. This loss of self can be harmful in the long run, because the most magnetic people are those who have rich, fulfilling lives independent of their partners. They're attractive because they're whole, confident, and don't rely on someone else to complete them. A healthy relationship is a balance between togetherness and individuality. You want to share your life, not give it away. When you hold on to your independence, you demonstrate that you respect yourself and your time. This respect for yourself becomes contagious. It encourages him to respect you, your boundaries, and your time. It also gives him a reason to stay interested, because he sees that you have your own world and you're inviting him into it, rather than making him the whole thing. In reality, people are drawn to those who have their own passions and lives. They want to be a part of someone's story, not the entire plot. When you maintain your friendships, hobbies, and goals, you bring more to the table. Your conversations become richer, your presence more vibrant, and your confidence more apparent. This combination is irresistible. Making him the center of your universe can put you in a position where you tolerate less than ideal behavior, simply because you don't want to lose the person who has taken over your life. When your emotional well-being depends on him, you might excuse red flags or settle for less than you deserve. This compromises your standards and damages your self-worth, which ultimately pushes him away, rather than keeping him close. Maintaining your life and your happiness independent of him isn't just good for you, it's good for the relationship. It creates a healthy dynamic where both of you bring your full selves to the table, and that's the foundation for lasting attraction and connection. Playing games in dating is something that often gets romanticized or misunderstood. People think it's clever or necessary to keep him guessing, or to not appear too available. But in reality, playing games tends to backfire and create confusion rather than attraction. When you start manipulating interactions, whether by purposely delaying texts, acting cold to seem mysterious, or testing his feelings, you're moving away from genuine connection and into emotional turbulence that wears both people down. Attraction is built on trust and clear communication, and games undermine both. When you withhold your true feelings or intentions, you create a wall between you and the person you're interested in. This can make him feel uncertain, frustrated, or even suspicious. If he doesn't know where he stands with you, he can't fully relax or invest emotionally. Instead of feeling drawn to you, he may feel like he's constantly trying to decode a puzzle that never quite fits together. One of the most common games is the text delay tactic, waiting hours or even days to reply just to appear busy or less eager. While it might feel like you're protecting yourself or raising your value, it often just makes the other person feel ignored or undervalued. If he cares, he'll want to hear from you, but consistent delays create doubt. Does she really want to talk to me, or is she just pretending? That doubt kills the emotional momentum and can lead to him pulling away instead of leaning in. Acting cold or indifferent is another game that sometimes gets mistaken for confidence, but coldness often feels like rejection or disinterest rather than intrigue. People want warmth, responsiveness, and emotional availability, especially when they're trying to build something meaningful. When you act aloof just to seem mysterious, you risk pushing him away because he doesn't feel a genuine connection. Mystery is sexy, but coldness is distancing. Testing him, like dropping hints to see if he notices, fishing for compliments, or creating situations to gauge his commitment, is also a game that backfires. It sends a message of insecurity rather than strength. Instead of inspiring him to prove himself because he wants to, it pressures him to prove himself out of obligation. Testing can make the relationship feel like a series of exams rather than a mutual enjoyable discovery. The key difference between confidence and games is authenticity. Confidence means you show up as yourself without masks, knowing that you're enough. You express your feelings and needs clearly and expect respect in return. Games, on the other hand, come from fear of rejection, fear of vulnerability, or fear of being too available. When you play games, you're trying to control the situation instead of letting things flow naturally. People want to be with someone who is real. They want to feel seen and understood, not tricked or manipulated. When you're authentic, you create safety and trust, which encourages deeper emotional connection. You give him permission to do the same. That's what builds real attraction. Of course, that doesn't mean you reveal everything immediately or sacrifice your boundaries. It means you communicate honestly about where you are emotionally and what you want, without playing mind games to test his feelings. You keep your dignity intact and invite him to do the same. This creates a space where both of you can be vulnerable on your own terms, which is far more attractive than any game could ever be. In the end, playing games only delays or damages what could be a genuine connection. Being straightforward, respectful, and authentic is what truly keeps interest alive. It's about showing up as your best self, not your most strategic self. And that kind of energy, it's magnetic. Seeking constant reassurance in a relationship or during the early stages of dating is a behavior that often stems from insecurity and fear. When you find yourself repeatedly asking questions like, "Do you like me? Are you still interested?" or "Where is this going?" what you're really communicating, often unintentionally, is doubt about your own worth and the stability of the connection. While it's natural to want clarity, seeking reassurance constantly can actually undermine the very thing you're hoping to build: trust, confidence, and emotional safety. One of the biggest challenges with seeking constant reassurance is that it puts a lot of pressure on the other person. When you regularly ask for validation, you make the relationship about your emotional needs in a way that can feel overwhelming. It can start to feel less like a balanced partnership and more like a responsibility to continuously prove your worth or commitment. This pressure can cause the other person to pull back, not because they don't care, but because they feel drained or unable to meet those demands consistently. In addition, constantly needing reassurance often signals a lack of self-confidence. It reveals that your emotional well-being is dependent on external validation rather than internal security. While everyone needs some amount of reassurance now and then, especially when a relationship is new or uncertain, making it a habitual pattern means you're not fully anchored in your own value. This can make you appear needy or desperate, even if that's not how you intend to come across. Another important point is that seeking reassurance can create a cycle of anxiety and doubt that's hard to break. The more you ask, the more you may worry about the answers you get. Even if the other person says all the right things, your insecurity may make you second-guess their words or actions, leading to more questions and more reassurance seeking. This cycle can erode your confidence over time and sabotage the natural flow of the relationship. It's also worth mentioning that people respond best when they feel trusted. When you trust that someone's words and actions are genuine, it fosters a sense of security and mutual respect. On the other hand, when you continuously question their feelings or intentions, it can make them feel mistrusted or misunderstood. This doesn't encourage open communication, it creates defensiveness and distance. Healthy attraction and connection are built on a foundation of mutual respect and emotional balance. That means knowing your worth, having boundaries, and giving the relationship space to develop naturally. Instead of seeking constant reassurance, the goal is to cultivate self-assurance and patience. When you believe in your own value, you allow the relationship to grow without needing to control or rush the outcome. This doesn't mean ignoring red flags or pretending everything is fine when it's not. It means being honest with yourself about what you need, and trusting yourself to recognize whether someone is truly invested. It also means learning to soothe your own fears and doubts, rather than relying solely on someone else's words for comfort. Seeking constant reassurance can keep you stuck in a place of insecurity and uncertainty, which is neither attractive nor fulfilling. Shifting the focus inward and building your own confidence creates a healthier dynamic where both people feel respected and valued. It's that internal strength that keeps attraction alive and relationships strong. Losing your boundaries is one of the most common reasons men lose interest, yet it's often overlooked or misunderstood. Boundaries aren't just rules you set for others, they're a reflection of how much you value yourself and the standards you hold for how you want to be treated. When you lose your boundaries, whether by saying yes when you want to say no, tolerating disrespect, or allowing someone to overstep your limits, you send a powerful message that you don't believe you deserve better, or that you're willing to settle for less than you want. And attraction is deeply tied to respect, both self-respect and the respect others have for you. When you allow your boundaries to slip, you create confusion for the person you're with. If you say one thing but behave another way, or if you tolerate behaviors you've said are unacceptable, it muddies the water of the relationship. This inconsistency can make a man question not only how much you respect yourself, but also how serious or confident you are about your own needs. Men are wired to respect strength and clarity. When a woman's boundaries are blurred or non-existent, it weakens the foundation of attraction. Setting boundaries isn't about being rigid or inflexible, it's about being clear and firm in what you will and won't accept. It's about protecting your emotional well-being and your time. For example, if someone cancels plans repeatedly without a good reason, a healthy boundary is to call that out, or decide how much you're willing to tolerate before walking away. If someone disrespects your feelings or dismisses your opinions, boundaries ensure you communicate that this isn't acceptable. Boundaries preserve your dignity, and when you uphold them, you demonstrate to a man that you respect yourself and that demands respect in return. When boundaries erode, it can also lead to resentment and emotional exhaustion on your part. You might find yourself feeling frustrated, hurt, or taken for granted because you didn't assert your limits early on. Over time, this imbalance drains the emotional energy in the relationship. Men can sense this shift when you're no longer your confident self, but someone who's overwhelmed or depleted. Interest naturally wanes. Another subtle effect of losing boundaries is that it often results in you sacrificing your own desires or goals to accommodate someone else. This can happen in small ways, like always agreeing to their plans even when you'd prefer to do something different, or bigger ways, like compromising your values to keep the peace. This kind of self-sacrifice doesn't create attraction, it creates imbalance and loss of identity. Men are attracted to women who have a life, purpose, and self-respect, independent of the relationship. When you lose your boundaries, you risk losing that unique part of yourself that initially drew him in. It's also important to recognize that boundaries protect you from emotional manipulation and unhealthy dynamics. Without clear limits, you might find yourself accepting inconsistent behavior, excuses, or even emotional games because you don't feel empowered to say no. This not only damages your self-esteem, but can also make the relationship toxic or one-sided. Attraction thrives in environments where respect and fairness exist, not where one person consistently gives and the other takes without consequence. Maintaining your boundaries is a powerful act of self-love and strength. It shows that you know your worth, and you won't settle for less than what honors your needs and values. When a man sees this, it increases his respect and interest because he knows he can't take you for granted. Boundaries create clarity, security, and mutual respect, all essential ingredients for lasting attraction. Being emotionally all in without any investment from him is a situation that many women find themselves in, often without even realizing it, until the emotional fatigue sets in. It's that place where you've opened your heart fully, shared your deepest thoughts, feelings and vulnerabilities, and given your time and energy freely, but the other person hasn't matched that level of commitment or engagement. This kind of emotional imbalance can kill attraction quickly, because relationships thrive on reciprocity, not one-sided devotion. When you pour yourself into someone emotionally too soon, or too much, you risk creating a dynamic where you're the only one truly vulnerable. Vulnerability is powerful and necessary for deep connection, but it only works when it's met with openness in return. If he's not investing emotionally, whether by sharing his feelings, making consistent efforts, or simply showing interest, then your emotional all-in can start to feel like an emotional drain. Instead of feeling closer, you might feel invisible or undervalued. One reason this happens is that some women believe that giving more emotionally will encourage the other person to step up or commit. They hope that by showing how much they care, the man will recognize their value and respond accordingly. But emotional overgiving can have the opposite effect. When a man senses that the emotional work is all on you, he may unconsciously pull away because there's no need for him to exert effort. The relationship loses its balance, and the sense of mutual pursuit or challenge disappears. This imbalance also affects how you see yourself. When you're constantly giving emotionally without getting much back, it chips away at your self-esteem. You start questioning whether you're enough, or if you're asking for too much. You may try harder to prove your worth, escalating your emotional investment in hopes of eliciting a response. But this cycle is exhausting and unsustainable. True connection grows from two people meeting each other halfway, not one person carrying the entire emotional load. Another important aspect is that being emotionally all in too early can cloud your judgment. When you're heavily invested emotionally, it becomes difficult to see red flags or inconsistencies, because your desire to make the relationship work overrides your intuition. This can lead to tolerating behaviors or attitudes that don't serve you well, simply because you've already given so much of yourself. It's easy to confuse emotional availability with emotional dependence, but the two are very different. Healthy relationships require emotional investment from both sides, and that includes consistent communication, effort, and vulnerability. When one person is checked out or distant, it creates frustration and uncertainty. Men, like anyone else, want to feel that their emotional presence matters and that their efforts are recognized. If he's not meeting you emotionally, it's not because he doesn't care. Sometimes it's because he's not ready or capable at that moment. But it's crucial to notice that gap and protect your heart accordingly. Emotional all-in without reciprocation often leads to burnout. You might find yourself emotionally exhausted, anxious, or feeling unappreciated. Instead of being excited about the relationship, you feel drained and on edge. This is a clear sign that the balance of investment needs to be addressed. The key to avoiding this trap is pacing yourself emotionally and observing how much he is willing to meet you. It's about holding space for connection without rushing to fill every gap with your own emotional availability. Letting him invest shows you who he really is and whether he's capable of the kind of partnership you deserve. Emotional balance creates a healthy dynamic where both people feel valued and motivated to keep growing together. Being emotionally all in too soon, without any real investment from him, creates a fragile foundation. Relationships flourish when emotional effort is shared, consistent, and mutual, not when it's one-sided and exhausting. Pretending to be someone you're not in order to attract or keep a man might seem like a harmless strategy at first, but it's one of the fastest ways to lose genuine interest and connection. When you hide your true self, whether by altering your opinions, suppressing your passions, or behaving in ways that feel unnatural just to please him, you create a false image that's impossible to sustain over time. This facade not only exhausts you emotionally, but also prevents authentic intimacy from developing, which is essential for long-term attraction. One of the biggest traps in pretending to be someone else is the idea that you have to fit a certain mold to be loved or desired. Maybe you believe that if you're too outspoken, too independent, or too emotional, you won't be accepted. So instead, you shrink parts of yourself, soften your edges, or try to mirror what you think he wants. But attraction isn't about fitting a checklist or playing a role, it's about the real you. When you dim your light to make someone else comfortable, you lose the spark that originally drew him in. Authenticity is magnetic because it signals confidence and self-acceptance. When you show up as yourself, flaws and all, you invite someone to connect with the real person behind the surface. That kind of vulnerability creates trust and deepens attraction. On the other hand, pretending to be someone you're not creates distance. Men can sense when something feels off or forced, even if they can't put their finger on it. That subconscious discomfort chips away at the natural chemistry. Maintaining a persona takes a lot of energy. It's mentally and emotionally draining to constantly monitor your words, actions, and reactions to fit a specific image. Over time, this exhaustion can lead to frustration or resentment, which then leaks into the relationship. You might find yourself feeling disconnected or unfulfilled because you're living inauthentically rather than embracing your true self. Pretending also sets unrealistic expectations. If a man falls for a version of you that isn't genuine, the inevitable moment of truth, when you reveal your authentic self, can feel like a betrayal to him. This can lead to disappointment, confusion, or even conflict, because the foundation of the relationship was built on something that wasn't real. Authentic connections require honesty from the start to create trust and emotional safety. It's important to remember that being authentic doesn't mean oversharing everything immediately or ignoring social cues. It means expressing your values, interests, and feelings in a way that's true to you without altering who you are to gain approval. This honesty invites respect and shows that you value yourself enough to be seen as you really are. It also gives him the chance to decide if he genuinely wants to be with the real you, not a version you think he wants. Pretending can prevent you from attracting the right kind of person. If you attract someone based on a false image, it's unlikely that the relationship will be fulfilling or sustainable. The right person will appreciate you for your genuine qualities, quirks, and unique perspective. That's the kind of connection that leads to long-term compatibility and happiness. Attraction is about chemistry, yes, but it's also about alignment and truth. When you present an authentic version of yourself, you set the stage for a relationship built on mutual understanding and real connection. Pretending to be someone you're not may seem like a shortcut, but it's a dead end. Real attraction grows from truth, confidence, and the courage to be unapologetically yourself. At the end of the day, the strongest, most lasting connections are built on honesty, respect, and genuine self-expression. When you stay true to yourself, honor your boundaries, and expect the same in return, you create a space where real attraction can flourish naturally. Remember, you don't need to change who you are or play games to keep someone interested. Your authentic self is more than enough. The right person will see your worth, match your energy, and appreciate you for all that you truly are. So stand firm in your value, love yourself fiercely, and watch how that confidence draws the right kind of love into your life.